If you guys need any Ultimate Team coins, go and check out igvault.com. Their link is down in the description. They're fast, cheap, and reliable. And if you use code REMA, you can get yourself a nice 6% extra discount. So what's going on, guys? My name's Ash and welcome back to a brand new video on the channel. In today's video, guys, I've got a defending tutorial for you, something which I hope will help you concede a lot less goals in FIFA 22. Now in today's video, guys, I'm going to try a different approach. I'm going to split this video into chapters so you guys can find the exact things you need. In the first section of this video, guys, I'm going to spend my time talking about something that I think is really important, and that is setting up mentally and obviously setting up your team correctly. On top of that, guys, I'm also going to try and break you out of some bad habits, some things I used to do when I wasn't very good at this game, and things that will hold you back when it comes to improving your defensive performance. The reason I'm doing this is because I've seen a lot of defensive tutorials out there, and of course they're very good, they tell you the right things, but they seem to be very situational. What I mean by this is they'll often show a few clips and they'll be like, yeah, this is what you want to do here, you want to press here, and it's like, okay, I've learned what to do here, but what about if it was over here or over there? Basically, what I'm trying to do is help you develop your own defensive style and really understand all the important mechanics that you need to use in order to do that. Because me just showing you examples where I'm winning the ball back occasionally, I don't really think that's beneficial to you. Yeah, you'll be like, oh, okay, I see what he's done there, but honestly, you're not really learning much from that. I want to give you the core knowledge you need to do that. But anyway, like I said, first off, we're going to start off with the team setup and the players that you should be using in order to improve your defensive game, because it is extremely important, probably the most important of the lot. So first off, I want you guys to look at my team, and more importantly the back line of Hernandez, Kimpembe, Marquinhos and Hakimi, and Donnarumma too. Now the reason I think it's important you guys see this is not because of the players themselves, it's because of what the players have. For example, my fullbacks Hernandez and Hakimi are both very fast players and they're both good on the ball. This is important down the wing because you need that speed. Most attackers down the wing are obviously going to be fast, so you need to match that with your fullbacks. And regarding the dribbling and agility, that needs to be high too, because if you do win the ball back, it is important that they are able to retain the ball. Now let's take a look at my first centre back, which is Kimpembe. Now the most important thing about Kimpembe is his work rates. He is a medium high, which I think is absolutely perfect for your centre backs. That is what you want to aim for. Now taking a look at the attacking work rate on a centre back, you really want a low or medium attacking work rate, and that means they won't start darting up the field. It means they won't contribute that much to attack, and that is what you want, because a defender's job is not to go and score goals, it's not to go and attack, it is to defend. And the high defensive work rate means the player will always keep their position, they will always be there to make blocks, and they will put in 100% effort when it comes to defending. That is extremely important because, for example, players like Van Dijk, they have a medium defensive work rate, and although they're good defenders, they don't make all the blocks that you need them to. They're not always in the correct positions, and it's very easy for a good player to spot this. Now Kimpembe also has very good pace, great defending and great physical. These are the three most important stats of a centre back. On the base card, it is important that a centre back has 80 or close to 80 pace in order to be good, because when you apply a shadow chem style, it means Kimpembe will actually have 91 pace. And although people say pace isn't that important, it really is, because it allows the centre back to cover the most ground that is possible. If a through ball is played through, they have the pace in order to go and catch the player that is running through. When it comes to closing players down, they are also very quick, which means they will get there a lot faster than somebody that does not have good pace. But as well as pace, obviously it's also important to have good defending and physical, because it's no good a centre back being fast and not being able to defend. A combination of good pace, strength and defending stats means that the player will be pretty much perfect when it comes to defending, and obviously we've just talked about the medium high work rates. The same thing applies to Marquinhos here. He's got very good pace, great defending, good physical, and he's a medium-high player, and obviously with a shadow that just gets even better. Now if you're struggling defending, I definitely suggest using a formation like the 4-2-3-1 or a formation with two central defensive midfielders. The reason for this is CDMs are extremely effective at breaking up the play. They're very good at making interceptions, and they act as an extra defensive line in front of your defense. Now I'm not going to spend a long time talking about my formation and tactics, penalties, because I've made a video on that. You guys can go and check that out. It's in the top right hand corner of the screen. But if you take a look at my two central defensive midfielders, which are Petit and Valverde, I have the settings on them to cut passing lanes, stay back while attacking, and cover the centre. Now the reason for this is in FIFA a lot of attacks and a lot of goals come from down the middle. So with these settings, your central defensive midfielders will cut the passing lanes, which means it'll be very difficult for your opponent to play the ball through the middle, because we've also got them on cover centre. And if you have them on stay back while attacking, it means they won't start bombing it up the pitch when you are attacking. And if you do lose the ball, they are always there in that position to win the ball back. Also, if you are defending with your central defensive midfielder when your opponent is attacking, it allows you to keep your defensive line in shape because you don't have to pull your centre backs out of position. Your CDMs are already there. And much like your centre backs, you want your CDMs to have a high defensive work rate, otherwise they're not going to do their job to their full potential. For example, I see a lot of people using Paul Pogba as a CDM, and I don't really understand why, because he's got a high medium work rate, he's not the fastest, and his defending isn't that great, which means his job is not really to defend, let's be real. So essentially you want to buy two CDMs that have high defensive work rates and good defending stats, because that means their job is to defend. That is what they're good at. If you buy a player like Pogba and use him as a CDM, that's not his strong point. So I know we've spent a long time talking about teams, work rates and things like that, but I think it is extremely important. It is the core of your defending, because if you have a bad team, it doesn't matter how good your defending is. If your players are not in the right places, if they're not good at what they're meant to be doing, it doesn't matter how good you are. And one last thing, guys, good team doesn't mean expensive team. For example, Paul Pogba is like 100k and he sucks at defending, so don't buy him. You could get Inform Chouameni, which is an 82 rated card. He costs about 15k and he will do a job that is 10 times better than Paul Pogba could at CDM. In this next section, guys, we're going to talk a lot about bad habits when it comes to defending, things that a lot of you might do without realizing. And some of these bad habits will mean you will concede a lot of goals, and you'll often be sat there wondering why am I conceding goals? And I'm going to tell you guys, it is very, very simple. Let's put it this way. When you're defending, what is your primary goal? Instinctively, it would be to get the ball back as fast as possible. Just get the ball so you can attack again. Naturally, how would anybody go about this? Well, you chase them down and you tackle them. What is your primary focus when you're doing this? Well, it would be the ball. Sounds good, right? No, it's completely wrong. This mindset is why a lot of people struggle with defending, because there is so much more to defending than just going and chasing down a player with the ball. By focusing on the football and the player with the ball, you're completely neglecting every other part of play. You're not considering where this football is going to be played. You're not looking around you to see who's moving. You're mindlessly just watching the ball and spectating the game, really. Now I'm just going to go into kickoff, control both teams and show you what I'm on about. So we're just going to watch this together and see what happens. Granit Xhaka slide tackles, gets a yellow card and it's a free kick. Now this time I've slowed it down, and don't look at the ball, look at the players in front of Kante and look at where Xhaka's going. Now here I was displaying the habit that I was on about. Look at what I'm doing. I've just chased down Kante with the ball without thinking of anything else, and I've circled the two players which Kante can easily pass the ball to. Now you've got to imagine that there is actually somebody controlling Kante and I haven't just got a second controller sitting there, but look at where Xhaka could go instead of chasing him down. This can prevent the attack from happening. Now instead, obviously, we just focus on the ball, slide in and get a yellow card, and then they've got a free kick. Now this wasn't meant to be the most perfect example, it was to open your eyes about looking elsewhere on the pitch. I was trying to show you the awareness that you guys should have about every player on the pitch opposed to just the one with the ball. Because it's the most common mistake I see with lower level players defending. Instead of thinking about what's going on around the player with the ball, they're just focusing on chasing down the player. So this is the habit you guys really have to break. It might seem difficult at first, but this alone will make you a much better defender. If you're aware of what's going on around you, you can start to notice a pattern with how your opponent plays. You will see players running in behind your defense. You'll notice movements that you didn't notice before because you are only focused on the ball. You'll be able to start predicting passes and where your opponent is going to play the ball. Essentially, you'll be a lot better at reading the game and your defensive performance will improve just off of that. The next habit I wanted to talk about was rage sliding, or a better term would probably be aggressive tackling. A lot of people I see jockey try and slide tackle people all the time. They try and aggressively challenge everybody. And this is probably the worst way you can possibly defend because it pulls all of your players out of position while you're doing this. And if you miss the slide tackle, you leave a massive gap. So instead of charging at everybody, try and work on cutting out those passing lanes. Try and work out where your opponent is going to play the ball. We'll talk more about how to do this in the next section, but this is something to really think about. The last main habit I see that a lot of people have is when they concede a goal, they just collapse defensively. Some people can be very solid defensively up until they concede that goal and then they just throw everything out of the window. My advice for this is just remember what you were doing before that goal. You have to accept that people concede goals in FIFA. I concede goals all the time. But coming back from 1-0 is much easier than coming back from 3-0, so just remember your defensive structure. If you let aggression and desperation take over, you will concede a lot more goals and you probably won't get anything out of the game because you'll have thrown it out the window by yourself. So even if you do concede a goal, just keep your patience. So they are the main habits that a lot of people need to break when it comes to defending in FIFA 22. In the next and final section, we're going to talk about the best defending mechanics and what these mechanics are useful for because they are extremely important. So I discussed earlier about cutting the passing lanes. In order to do this, you need to learn how to jockey. Now by default, the button for jockey is L2 on the PlayStation and LT on the Xbox. This is by far the most important button when it comes to defending in FIFA. Firstly, I'm going to show you an example of me trying to block a passing lane without using the jockey button, and then we're going to compare it to me using the jockey button. So this is me trying to block the pass to Kante without the jockey button, and you can see a lot of the time I'm all over the place and Kante is free to receive the ball. You can see that it is not very effective in cutting that passing lane. Now this is me using the jockey button and you can see how much easier it is for me to actually mark Kante. The movements are more precise, the player defending is always facing the player that is controlling the ball, and he makes himself a lot wider so it is easier to actually block the pass. Now when you're defending, I suggest using the jockey button about 80% of the time because it is the best way to mirror your opponent's movements. Next, we're going to talk about second man press and how to use it. Second man press is used by holding RB on Xbox or holding R1 on PlayStation. The general rule of second man press is that the person that is closest to the player with the ball that is not being controlled by you will chase after them. Now the second man that is pressing on your team will have a green triangle above their head, and this is like a little stamina bar, and when it goes red it means they can't press anymore. The cool thing about second man press is that you can be cutting off a passing lane with the player you're controlling, and by holding R1 you can have another player chase down the player with the ball, so you're doing two things at once. I'm going to show you an example of this so you guys get the idea. So as you can see, we are holding R1 here and the player that is pressing runs after the player with the ball and takes it off them easily. I'll show you another example here. This time we're going to press as Chelsea, and you can see we control Jorginho, who is there to block off a passing lane, and then Kante goes and presses the ball. Now second man press can be used in endless situations, but it's important not to abuse this as it can drag players out of position. Only use second man press when the player is already close to the person with the ball or they're in a position to do so. For example, you don't want to hold R1 all the time because let's say your right back starts second man pressing and then they just play a ball in behind. You're screwed. You don't want to do that. You want to do this in a position where the player with the ball does not have too much space already and there is not many options. I also suggest pressing with the player that is further up the pitch opposed to the one that is further back. So for example, if I wanted to press, I would control my defender and then press with my CDM. Lastly, you guys should get used to right stick player switching because it is way more effective than switching with the left bumper. When you player switch with the left bumper, it is automatic. EA decide who you player switch to. Which sounds great in theory, but a lot of the time it will not switch to the player that you want it to switch to, and you're left struggling when you're defending. When you use the right stick to player switch, you have complete control about who you want to switch to. So you have a lot more variety when it comes to defending, and you can be a lot quicker and responsive. Now, I can't really teach you how to player switch because it's something that just takes time in order to master. The more time you spend learning learning how to player switch, the better you will get at defending, and the better you'll obviously be at player switching. It's something that takes a lot of time and practice, but the more you use it, the more you will get used to it. To finish off the video, guys, I'm just going to give you some pointers when it comes to defending. There is no perfect way to defend, you know. People defend in different ways. People have different styles. Some people like to press constantly. They like to always be closing down the player with the ball. Other players just like to sit back, cut passing lanes, and wait for an opportunity to take the ball. There's no real right way to do it. So my advice for you guys is to experiment with the different defensive styles and see which one is more comfortable for you. If you're an aggressive player, it might be best for you to try pressing your opponent and giving that a real go. Or if you prefer being patient, you can sit back and just mark passes. My point is, there's no real perfect way to defend. It's up to you how you do it. Another thing I'd like to say is using the player switching that we've talked about, you can mark over the top through balls a lot easier. That is something that is very important, because if you see a striker on your opponent's team looking to run in behind your defensive line, you know you have to switch to that player to stop them running through. You have to mark it in advance. Lastly, guys, I'd just like to say that everything we've talked about takes a long time to master. It's took me like 5 years to get to where I am when it comes to my defensive display. The more you practice, the better you are when it comes to these things. The purpose of this video was not to turn you into the best defensive player in 15 minutes. It was to give you the tools in order to do that yourself. But anyways, guys, I've worked very hard on this tutorial, so if you have enjoyed it or found it useful, I'd very much appreciate it if you could drop this video a thumbs up, as that really does help me out. Subscribe to the channel if you are new, so you never miss out on any videos like this one. I have a lot of videos coming over the next few months. Also, don't forget to turn on notifications so you are notified when a video is posted. And with all that aside, guys, I hope you all have a fantastic rest of your day, and I'll catch you all later. Peace.